Hi guys, this is Twin Peaks Twin Perspective. Tonight I'm going to be talking about Twin Peaks The Return, parts 1 through 8. Full spoilers on everything Twin Peaks. Last night my brother and I covered Twin Peaks The Return, parts 1 through 8, as far as New York, South Dakota, and Las Vegas were concerned. Tonight I'm going to be diving into, we're going to be taking a walk through the Pines, into the town where no one is innocent. And we're also going to touch on the All-Stars of the FBI. They're pretty much the heart and soul of the old Twin Peaks, especially in this series, The Return, right now, where we focus so little time on the main old characters of Twin Peaks. I think that Gordon Cole and Albert have been the driving force in this. Bringing back these old memories, and Hawk, of course. But the first time we see Twin Peaks in The Return, we actually see Dr. Jacoby receiving a shipment of shovels. And later on, we see him painting them gold, and we eventually find out that he's selling them. So you can dig your way out of the shit and into the truth. We're going to go to the Great Northern right now. We're going to talk about Ben Horne and Jerry Horne. Ben Horne has an assistant named Beverly, and it appears he's running the hotel. We don't know about the department store. One-Eye Jacks apparently is someone else's now, and he also lost Ghostwood to Catherine. We never heard about any of this, but we know he's running the hotel. And Jerry has his illegally sanctioned marijuana sales thing going on, at least the edibles. We know that for sure. And Jerry was always talking about food, so it's fitting. And later on we see Jerry on the side of the mountain, and he's actually smoking a joint, so maybe he sells more than just the edibles. We don't know yet. And then we see Jerry one other time. He's still in the woods. He calls Ben because he can't find his car. He thinks it's stolen. He doesn't know where he's at, and he exclaims, "I think I'm high." We're pretty sure he's high. A lot of people have just brushed that off, but some people think that maybe he really had an incident out there. Some people thought his car was actually stolen, and some people thought that he may have lost time, which means he could have been abducted, or he could have wandered into a place in the woods that few people go. So we'll see about Jerry. Good old Ben. We have one other scene with Ben. He's with Beverly in Beverly's office. It's Beverly's office. She stands by the desk, and there's no Ben sign on the front of the desk, so it's Beverly's office. Beverly's been hearing the sound in her office for what she says has been about 6 days a week, and that's as long as the series has been on. Basically when the stars turned and a time presented itself. So that opening in Ghostwood opened up because Jupiter and Saturn are meeting now, and this ringing, humming started, and I assume it's coming from the wood. A lot of people think it's Josie. She's in the wood. It's Ghostwood. The wood holds many spirits, so it's definitely coming from the wood. And the sound got louder as Cooper's old room key arrived in the mail. Nobody's made this connection in the show, but we as the audience know this. It's gotten louder since the key arrived. Ben didn't want to talk about it. He mentioned Cooper and he mentioned Laura Palmer, but he didn't want to get into great detail, and we all know why. And Beverly asked those great questions. Who's Agent Cooper? Who's Laura Palmer? It's just classic. And then right before the scene ends, Beverly seems to be wanting to hang out a little longer, and Ben says, no, it's time to go home. It's quitting time. And Beverly goes home to what we assume is her husband, Tom, and Tom's ill in a wheelchair, and he's not eating because he's worried about Beverly, and he doesn't trust her, and she's not very believable, and they have a strained relationship. And so that's pretty much all we have from the Great Northern right now. Other than that, there is someone from New York named Mrs. Hausman that's staying there. And it's kind of interesting to me because they mentioned she's from New York. And she had a problem with a skunk. But Ben says the skunk was on the other side of the hotel. So if she didn't see the skunk, perhaps she smelled it. And if she smelled something bad, perhaps it's not the skunk. After all, the skunk was on the other side of the hotel. So perhaps she's complaining about the smell, which could very well be coming from, room 315 for all we know. Maybe they haven't rented that room in the last week or something. I don't know. But we may get to the Great Northern again and see some more of that with Miss Hausman. And we definitely know that Ben is going somewhere with that key. It looks like he wants to show it to somebody else, and I know all you guys are hoping it's Audrey. Be a good way to get her in. We thought that's the way we were going to get her in before. And then, of course, with this last episode called Got a Light, a lot of people thought it would be Audrey saying those words, got a light. That didn't happen. Nobody realized it was going to be a woodsman in 1956. But so next in Twin Peaks, we're going to go to the Twin Peaks Sheriff's Station. And that's where the heroes are, Deputy Chief Hawk now. And we have Andy and Lucy Brennan. They're married. And they have a son named Wally. And the new sheriff is a familiar name, Sheriff Truman. Those people who are in the Twin Peaks lore deep knew that Harry had a brother named Frank. And with the book by Mark Frost, The Secret History of Twin Peaks, we actually find out Frank was the sheriff of Twin Peaks long before Harry ever became sheriff. And I believe technically right now Harry's still the sheriff and Frank's just taking his place until he can beat this thing and come back. We'll see what direction they want to go in as far as Harry is concerned. One other character that's mentioned is Doc Hayward, who makes an appearance through Skype. And he's the one that draws Sheriff Truman's attention to what Dale Cooper was doing at the hospital. Brought him in to get checked up, and later on he's coming out of ICU. Doc Hayward seems to think Mr. C, or Dale Cooper as he was thinking, was visiting Audrey Horne, and because Audrey was in a coma. But he could have also been visiting Annie, because Annie should have been in ICU at the time. A lot of people think he was just going in there to get the ring, which we find out in the missing pieces Annie is wearing. So if that's the case, then all you Audrey fans don't have to worry about the evil implication of what happened if Mr. C did visit Audrey while she was in a coma that night. Especially with the fact that we got a guy named Richard Horne running around. A lot of people say Ben Horne had a lot of kids, just look at Donna. He probably had this kid, with some other woman. Maybe it's Jerry's kid. They kind of look alike. When Jerry was younger, he looks a lot like the guy playing Richard. So there's hope for you Audrey fans. There really is. But in the history of Twin Peaks, when you see something, you identify it, and so where my mind's going, I think Richard is a product of Mr. C and Audrey. Okay, so in the sheriff's station, Lucy's having a hard time with cell phones, and Andy seems to be taking on some more difficult cases. He took the case with the OD in the school, and he took this case of a kid getting run over. He screwed that one up. He screwed the pooch on that one, and we're kind of hanging on that right now. Andy was going to meet this guy, the farmer, where I'm assuming is Billy. He never showed up for the meeting, which was supposed to take place at 4:30. It was 2:30, and this farmer was saying, Andy, you got to get out of here right now. I'll meet you later. And Andy, I guess out of the kindness of his heart, and the old Andy Griffith Show way of doing things, sure, buddy, I'll meet you later. Just leave this incriminating evidence here and get back to me later. And then, of course, Andy's wearing a Rolex. But I really don't think that has anything to do with anything. I think, it's probably a gift, retirement gift. I don't know, whatever. Maybe he'll sell the watch later and buy a car. I don't know. So anyway, that's Lucy, that's Andy. And Hawk has been the driving force. He gets a phone call from the log lady. Log lady gives him the clues, which lead him to these missing diary pages in the bathroom stall. There are 3 pages, and for some reason Hawk knows that there's 4 missing, and there's 3. He found 3, so he feels there's 1 more missing. For the narrative of the story, we'll go with that. But anybody that's watched the series and watched the movie knows that that diary was ripped to shreds. It was in pieces all over Harold Smith's apartment, or his domicile. We see later Cooper has tried to piece all pages together in the conference room, and he's trying to, or I think it was the room downstairs by the jail cells actually, but he's trying to put all the pieces together, and I find it very difficult to believe that they would know after all of that exactly how many pages were missing. But that's what we got so far, and Hawk's assumption is also that Leland Palmer put the pages there, with a toilet right next to him. He could have just flushed it all down, but instead he hides them in the door. There was nothing in those pages that I think Bob wanted anyone to know, and if it was Leland, perhaps he wanted those pages saved. He didn't want to incriminate himself at the time, but he wanted the pages to remain saved in case they would become useful later on. If that were the case, if that was Leland's motive, then perhaps he has this deeper understanding of what's going on with Cooper and Laura, that whole passage. Maybe he thought, if my daughter's trying to say something, this might be important, we'll save it for later. That could be it. But I'm under the assumption that Mike put them there, the one-armed man. Those pages were useless at the time because the event hadn't happened, but he wanted to hide them somewhere where they could easily be found later on. So he hides them in the door, because if he'd have kept them on him, he's afraid Bob would have got a hold of them and destroyed them. So he hides them for the time being. And then whenever the information on those pages becomes relevant, then the White Lodge sends the message through the log to Hawk, and Hawk is able to find them. That makes more sense to me, but for right now, we've only got Hawk's assumption to go on, that the pages were hidden by Leland. And we know, since there's a 4th missing page, we're going to find, hopefully, this page soon, and God only knows what's going to be on that page, but it's interesting to think about. As far as the sheriff station goes, Sheriff Truman's wife makes a couple of appearances. She's, I would say, very high-strung, and Truman is able to show how patient he is and how tolerant he is through all of this. And eventually we find out they lost their son. Their son committed suicide. I believe he was a veteran, and Deputy Chad decides to make fun of this. Now, just about every single line that has been spoken by Deputy Chad so far has been some smart-ass remark. This is his character, and the guy that plays Deputy Chad is going to have a hard time going anywhere in public, because people get confused. They're going to think he's the guy that hates veterans or something. It's a tough role to play, but some great lines. I mean, everything the guy says is just smart ass. First he questions the log lady, her relevance at all, and then he's like, Pinocchio's friend, I'll chew on that. I'll go talk to my pine cone. Later on, we see Deputy Chad in the roadhouse, and he's taking money from Richard Horn, and it's a large sum of money. And we see Richard later involved in running of drugs in the Twin Peaks, so we are left to assume that Deputy Chad is a bad cop, and he has something to do with these drugs coming in. There's another deputy there named Deputy Jesse. We don't know too much about him. And there's another deputy answering the the switchboard while Lucy is out there. I think her name's Maggie. While Lucy's out in the front, just handling the people walking in, maybe just basic little calls. Everything 911's going to this back room in the sheriff's station. Another interesting thing is when you're leaving that back room, the sign tells you no cell phones beyond this point, which is kind of like telling them, don't let Lucy see it. And we're left to believe something's wrong with Lucy from the very beginning. The first time we see her, this guy comes in selling insurance, and she's trying to be helpful, and she's always been dedicated at helping. She just takes a long roundabout way to get there. It's the phone they moved, the one by the lamp, the black phone, not the brown phone, and the whole time it's ringing with the light blinking. But she's over here trying to be helpful, and she's talking about which Sheriff Truman are you talking about? I think it's just a funny scene. It's left to leave everybody confused as to what's going on. True fans knew that there was a Frank Truman already. So, but the way that insurance guy ran out of that place, he looks at her like he's trying to hurry up and sneak out, and he's extremely uncomfortable. Like, he doesn't want to be around Lucy anymore because Lucy's like one of the most off-the-wall people he's ever met, and it's obvious from the get-go. Now, a lot of people think the way they're treating Lucy in Twin Peaks: The Return isn't genuine enough to her past character. It leads a lot of people to believe there's something wrong with her, or they're just taking it too far with the slapstick comedy, because I believe the whole fear of cell phones is just what the Twin Peaks community has thought about for 25 years. Most of us wished there would be no advancements in technology. We wanted the jukebox in the double R, and we wanted the cords on the phone and no cell phones. And Lynch was like, okay, we're getting with the times, and this is kind of like a spoof on that. It's like, hey, look, she doesn't like cell phones, just like you guys didn't want cell phones. She doesn't like them either. So there you go. She might be sick. We don't know, but we'll see. Wally is their son. To me, he acts like Dick Tremaine's son because he speaks poetically in his description of his travels on the road, much like Dick Tremaine speaks about Horne's department store, men's fashions. Andy and Lucy have never spoke poetically in their lives, and Wally Brando's monologue was classic. So obviously Dick Tremaine's kid, if that's their kid at all. My brother seems to think they're faking it, and she's suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder from losing her actual child. And the birth date doesn't match up because according to them, Wally was born on Marlon Brando's birthday, which means Wally would have been born a month after the series ended, or a year and a month after the series ended. So it doesn't make any sense that he would have been born on that day. It's a 4-month pregnancy or something like that. So, but that's all I'm going to say about Andy and Lucy, and that's where we're at with Hawk. He has the pages now, which basically tells him the Cooper that came out of the lodge was not the real Cooper, the good Cooper. Now, what he can do with that, I don't know. I don't think Hawk's going to be taking a trip into the woods, going to Glastonbury. He went out there the night Jupiter and Saturn met. He knew something was going to happen on that night. I'm sure that whoever's in the sheriff's department had a connection to this. They spoke about it. I'm sure that they have it marked down somewhere as, this is when Jupiter and Saturn meet again. We have to be prepared. And he knew where to go because he'd been there before. He found pages of the diary at Glastonbury. He found a bloody towel at Glastonbury. He'd been out there before, and he went out there again the last time we saw the log lady. He spoke to her on the cell phone, and the log and Hawk were on the same page. We see the red curtain in Glastonbury, but I don't think Hawk sees it. I think it was just to let us know that opening was happening. Now, if Hawk did see it, he didn't walk in for sure, and I'm pretty sure, and he's not going to tell anybody about it. So, why? I mean, it's happening. I guess he can go into great detail later if he wants to. But so that's where we're at right now with the sheriff's department. The most interesting character there, I think, is Chad. He's driving a lot of the negativity in the plot, and it's all going to come to a halt. Deputy Bobby Briggs is the last one there that I didn't speak about. He's going to be a hero in this, I believe. Whether he saves his daughter, who I think Becky's his daughter, and or he busts Chad on this drug ring. Either way, I'm really hoping Bobby comes through. The other characters in Twin Peaks right now that we have to talk about is Richard getting involved with this cat, Red. Red does a magic trick with the coin, and it seems pretty mystical. A lot of people are thinking that perhaps he has some connection to the Black Lodge. And I thought Red was a good character as a host. He was an evil dude in that first scene. But then he gets emasculated by Red. And so I've got to pick which level I'm going to go on. Either Richard's a really, really bad dude with potential son of Bob, and then you've got Red, who's just got this connection to the Black Lodge and just dominates this one. I don't know if I want to give both of them that much power. Richard seems like a bit of a weasel now to me, and Red could just be one of those eccentric characters that Lynch creates all the time, you know, doing great things. I mean, I'll talk about David Patrick Kelly in Wild at Heart. There's a scene when, you know, he's only in like 2 scenes. His character's almost irrelevant, and he's dancing on the sidewalk when he's walking towards the camera, and he's singing a song, and obviously he's trying to recall a song and singing it to his buddy as he's walking along. It's just one of them things that Lynch likes to do, something crazy. Now, if this character was in Twin Peaks, we'd be talking about how he's dancing around all the time. Remember, the one-armed man danced. I mean, the man from another place danced all the time, and he was singing, do. You know, there's music in the air, and so that's what I mean. Sometimes these characters are just eccentric, and because they're in Twin Peaks, we give them a lot more credit for some of the things they're doing than maybe they deserve. So, if Red is a magician and he's actually the grandson growing up or something like that, you know, that's giving him a lot of credit, and we'll see if he's in that route. But for right now, I'm going with Red is the main dude bringing in the drugs. He's running them into Twin Peaks. Richard's going to be the guy like Jacques used to run the drugs in, and then Leo used to be the guy taking the drugs from Jacques and selling it. So that's what I think Richard is. Richard's like the Leo, and Red's like the Hank and the Jacques, running the drugs. So Red does this crazy coin flip and makes Richard feel like a moron. Richard goes off in a rage, high on this sparkle stuff, and runs over a kid. Apparently he was driving somebody else's truck, who I'm going to assume is Billy's truck at this point, the farmer, and does a piss poor job of cleaning it. Now we know why, because it wasn't his truck to begin with. And we'll see what happened with this guy, Billy, or the farmer. We'll see what happened to the farmer. A lot of people think he was worried about either Richard or Red showing up, and ominous feeling when we get to his house and the door's open and he didn't show up on time. So hopefully we'll figure out all that. We'll see where that goes. Another name that was mentioned there in that sequence was a Mary Ann. That's where Richard was supposed to go to get the rest of the stuff, at Mary Ann's. And Richard was kind of weirded out that Red knew it, but Red's been in town for a few days. So Red's been in town ever since the stars turned. He's been in town for like 2 weeks, way before. So I don't know who Mary Ann is, but Mary Ann is a similar sounding name to Miriam. Miriam was a name of a teacher who went into the Double R. That's another location in Twin Peaks. We went to the Double R. Shelley's still working there. Norma's still running the place. We haven't gotten much from Norma except for that she still loves Shelley and takes care of Shelley like she's a sister or Shelley's mother. And Shelley's running the place. She's sitting in there doing the books, and she's huffing it. And she's always been a strong, independent woman. She's had to be, because Hank was, her husband, was such a jerk. And it seems like Norma's made it work up until this point. And Shelley's happy she's there. And we also have Heidi, who's there with her laugh that nobody else can duplicate but her. I can't do it either. And this woman, Miriam, comes in, school teacher, leaving a tip too big for her salary. And some people think maybe she's involved in the drug running. when Richard ran over that kid, Miriam locked eyes with Richard. A lot of people thought, well, Richard's going to be busted because Miriam saw him. But if Miriam's involved in the drugs, then she's not going to be telling anybody anything. So I think we're going to have to see something to that effect. Richard's going to have to end up at Mary Ann's house to get the rest of the stuff. And we're going to have to see what this Miriam does after witnessing the obvious culprit. Maybe she doesn't know who Richard Horne is. Maybe nobody knows who this punk is, but he's a Horne. I have a feeling he's just full of himself because he's a Horne. He's bumming people's trucks and stuff, so that's weird. But anyway, the rest in the double R that we get is that one scene with Bing coming in, asking if anybody's seen Billy. And Bing is being played by Riley Lynch, David Lynch's son. So I'm sure he'll have another part in it. It might have just been a freak thing, you know. And of course, the people changing in the middle of the scene, which I think was just an editing continuity flaw, but we'll see. But time jumping just makes me nervous. I don't like that. That requires several viewings before you can even wrap your head around it. And that's all we got for the double R. Except Becky and Steven. Becky is Shelley's daughter, and Steven is this deadbeat boyfriend that we think at first. But when you look at the credits, and it's always important to look at the credits, you see that Becky's last name is Burnett, the same as Stephen Burnett, and that Burn in it reminds me of Annie Blackburn. If there was ever a character that showed up in a show that gave away her intentions right away, it was Annie Blackburn. I mean, we had the Black Lodge, and we had the Fire Walk with Me Burn. So to see Annie Blackburn, that's just crazy. And I noticed this here, Burnett. Okay, what's significant about the credit is that we have no idea who Shelley's married to still. We don't know whose kid she is because she's going by this dweeb's last name. We see Steven trying to get a job. He applies at a job that Mike Nelson seems to be managing. And good to see old Mike. Mike seems to have grown up. He takes charge. He calls that kid in just to tell him he needs to straighten up or he's never going to get a job anywhere. I have no intention of hiring you, and I wouldn't refer you to anybody. And, you know, get out of here. And then calls him an asshole. It's great, but Steven deserves it. And then later on we see Steven's done way more of this powdered substance than he needs to. I'm going to say it's Sparkle at this point. And he gives some to Becky before they take off, and listening to the oldies, a beautiful shot of Becky looking up. It's just ominous of things to come. So right now my best bet is Red's bringing the drugs in, Richard's grabbing the drugs, he's selling them to everybody, and Steven's getting the drugs that way and giving them to Becky. Now we have the Roadhouse where all these bands are playing, and I'm not going to bother talking about them. The main character there is Jean-Michel Renault. We find out that the Roadhouse has been owned by the Renaults forever. So, 57 years or something like that. Wow, man, it's just incredible. The Renault family has been there that long. They've been in so much trouble with the law. Sheriff Harry Truman had a book on all the Renaults. They've all been investigated before, so the Roadhouse is a pretty hopping place, and the Renaults have never relinquished ownership. That's wild, and you see the corrupt cops there, so perhaps that has something to do with it. But Renault, Jean-Michel, and it's hard to call him just Jean because he had a brother named Jean. This is Jean-Michel. He's obviously involved in running girls too, like they used to before. This is like a one-eyed Jacks kind of setup thing, and a customer calls complaining, and I guess the girls were 15, and Jean-Michel didn't know that. He says, it's not my business, and he's not worried about any repercussions because the Renaults have been owning the Roadhouse forever. So, shady character. The good old Renaults, man. You can count on them. So that's what's going on at the Roadhouse, and I'm not going to worry too much about mentioning the bands. They've all been great. Some of you don't like them at all. But one scene of significance in the Roadhouse is actually the first time we go there, and the end of the second part. That's when we see Shelley for the first time. We also see James Marshall, James Hurley, and he walks in with a kid with a green glove, and we find out that James has been in a motorcycle accident. We haven't heard about Donna Hayward at all, so I'm assuming that Donna died in that motorcycle accident. That's why James has been so quiet. That's what I'm going with right now. We haven't gone back to James yet. We know that he's cool and that he has always been cool. And James Marshall, the actor that plays James Hurley, is a very cool dude. He's always been cool. If you want to know what this guy's really like, just pull up one of the videos on YouTube that feature him at one of these Twin Peaks festivals and see how he answers the questions. He's so accessible and just a regular laid-back guy. And, you know, if I had my chance to hang out with him and talk to him, it'd probably be a lot of fun. He's just a regular dude, and he's interested in a lot of weird stuff, neat stuff, you know. The stories he told, I just thought were great, and y'all check that out if you don't believe that James has always been cool. I'm going with that, and you know, that's it. That's it for Twin Peaks. We saw Sarah Palmer once in her house watching a water buffalo get devoured by lions, and she's drinking and smoking. It's a vice, what can I say? And we know we're going to see her again. We haven't seen Big Ed yet. I'm dying to see Big Ed. Nadine in the credits, she was Nadine Hurley. So they're still married, or she's still keeping her married name. And we haven't seen Big Ed yet. And another interesting thing that's never really been brought up yet is when Sheriff Truman is getting that car fixed for his wife's father, he talks about somebody else fixing the car. He doesn't mention Big Ed is looking into the car, and he doesn't mention James is looking into the car. So whoever this, I think it's Sammy. So whoever this Sammy guy is the new mechanic, at least the mechanic that's doing the car. Maybe he did a bad job and they'll actually bring it to Big Ed Hurley's gas farm. I sure hope it still exists. We haven't seen Big Ed yet. And of course, we haven't seen the lovely Audrey yet. It's a tragic story, really. Audrey is such a beloved character, and everybody loves Sherilyn Fenn. Everybody loves Audrey. Everybody wants Audrey. Everybody needs Audrey. And we know we're going to get her. And so, y'all just be patient. It's coming. I'm kind of looking for Big Ed more, actually. But this Richard Horne thing's got me very interested in what's up with Audrey. Now, that takes care of the town of Twin Peaks. That's where we're at now. And I also want to mention before I go, the All-Stars, the Philadelphia field office. We're talking about Director Gordon Cole, Bureau Chief, Regional Bureau Chief Gordon Cole, and his trusted sidekick, it seems, at this point nowadays, a forensics expert, Agent Albert Rosenfield. That's A-L-B-E-R-T. R-O-S-E-N-F-I-E-L-D. Are we going to have to stand here all day, Curly? Albert, the best lines in the world, and my namesake on my channel, Rosenfield 10. Albert and his lines of dialogue are some of the most beautiful things in the history of the world, and that's how I feel. We get a lot of great action with them. They really carry a bulk of the parts there in the middle. We first see them investigating the congressman's dilemma. All of this evidence laid out seems absolutely pointless, and none of it's going to connect back. But the one thing about the congressman's dilemma that we have to worry about is that the congressman didn't want to give up who he knew did it because it would breach national security. which gets us thinking about top secret, national security, perhaps a little Blue Rose case going on here, maybe somebody in the Air Force. So Congressman's dilemma may come back. We never know. But that's what all of them are working on. And Agent Tammy Preston is working on New York. She presents the evidence, not much, and then she is forced to join Albert and Gordon on their quest to see Cooper, who they think is Cooper. They go to South Dakota, the Black Hills of South Dakota, and they get there. They see that this is not Cooper. He gives himself up from the second word. It's, "You're a very good to see you again, old friend." So Tammy looks into this, finds something weird about the fingerprints, and then Albert explains somebody flipped that print around to make it look like it was normal, but it's not, the ring finger. And then we have Albert do his whole little thing with the fingers. A lot of people were confused about what that meant, and it's pretty obvious. Tammy Preston is a regular agent. Cooper's trying to train her, develop her, to make her think a different way. If she wants to become a special agent, especially to be involved in these Blue Rose cases, then she's going to have to think about things differently. Now you think about that, Tammy. And that's what he meant. It's the spiritual mound. So that's pretty excellent. He's given Tammy a chance. And you see right before the camera pulls away, she starts to think about it real hard. Like, maybe I should think about this. So there's hope for Tammy yet. And then there's Diane, who didn't want nothing to do with the FBI at first. She tells Albert off, then she tells Gordon off, and then she tells Tammy off, and she doesn't want to do anything unless she's in complete control. And then she has her scene with Mr. C, and we're left to believe that something happened the last time they met. And I don't think Dale Cooper left that meeting with Diane, went to Twin Peaks, and then had all these fond tapes that he sent to her, talking about ducks on the lake and the love he has for Annie now. And they were all it was all very personal. It was obviously sent to a friend that he trusted. And this meeting, I believe, it was actually Mr. C, after he got out of the lodge, went and visited Diane. Now, Diane had no reason to believe this wasn't Cooper when he first walks in. He looks different. There's something different about him. And obviously he's been through something. He explains what he's doing on the tapes to her. And when Gordon Cole says, "This has something to do with something you know about, we're not going to say anything else about that," what he meant was, Diane knows about Blue Rose cases. We're not supposed to talk about Blue Rose cases. And that's what he meant. You know about this stuff. We're not going to say anything else about it. I always imagine these tapes eventually are confiscated by the military once these two get to working together. I find it interesting the Air Force wants to contact the FBI at this point. Major Briggs, really didn't have anything to do with, why would the military want Major Briggs, the FBI, to find out what happened to Major Briggs? Of course, Major Briggs, I believe, wanted Dale Cooper to eventually be the one to take over that outpost with the satellites, and eventually it was all burned. Supposedly that was the way that Major Briggs died, this outpost burned, and in the book it suggests that he wanted Coop to take over, and then when Coop met him that last time, he decided, oh no, so he probably went and faked his death, I think, and then tried to go rescue Coop, and eventually did some time traveling in the White Lodge before eventually getting Mr. C catching up to him. That's where I'm at on that right now. I think the FBI is going to get involved. They're going to be involved with this body of Major Briggs, and perhaps the ring, the Dougie ring inside of Major Briggs' belly, will lead the FBI to the real Cooper. Perhaps it'll be the news footage of the incident with Ike Spike. There's also the fingerprints of Dale Cooper on that gun. I could figure that out too. So we've got all that. I hope that Diane sticks around. I hope she stays with the FBI. I hope she continues to do this investigation. If she goes home, I hope we at least have one more scene with her. Because I think Laura Dern's been a force right now. I think she's been a beautiful thing. Excellent performance so far in just a couple of scenes. And I'm gonna do another video later on down the line talking about the Black Lodge and the White Lodge. Those are the last two things I want to touch on as far as parts 1 through 8 before we get to this new one coming up. Episode 9. This is The Chair. We've been waiting 2 weeks for it. Some may say we've been waiting 3 weeks for it because we didn't really have much of the basic movie plot driven in this last episode. Part 8 was basically a history lesson in the most imaginative and visual way it could possibly be shown to you. This area that might be the White Lodge, that scene was gorgeously done, and Señorita Daito, and I'll probably do a video tomorrow or the next day breaking down the White Lodge and the Black Lodge, and that's basically all I've got left to say about it until we get to this new episode. That's where we're at right now. Hope you guys enjoyed this, and this has been Twin Peaks Twin Perspective. Please subscribe to Rosenfield 10 on YouTube, and you'll get more videos like this. And I'll talk to you later. Bye.